We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
An order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
When our founders declared a new order of the ages.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
It's been a long time coming, but tonight, because of what we did on this day, in this election, at this defining moment, change has come to America.
All right, folks, there is a lot going on right now. Decisions being made that are unprecedented and will have an overreaching impact on what it means to live in the United States of America.
We are in a radically expanded era of executive power. We are in an era of radically expanded executive power that was expanded on purpose.
I think what we're starting to see, for anybody who is objective at all, is we're seeing a totalitarian system now unveil itself. And ever since essentially 9/11 happened, it's been more and more of these draconian measures that are leading us right down the road to martial law.
The president has made some pretty crazy power grabs himself in the last few months. Of course, the NDAA and the subsequent bill where they can declare martial law under any emergency.
Or look at the TSA and the airports groping people. Look at the drones in our skies. We see the president signing legislation to charge people with felonies if they protest at national security
events.
Another
speech announcing a radical new claim of presidential power that is not afforded by the Constitution and that has never been attempted in American history, even by George W. Bush and Dick Cheney.
This is simply the latest string of actions taken by the administration that ignore the basic principles of our Constitution.
There's major power grabs happening, and if we don't stand up and decry them, we're all in serious, serious danger.
Congress, your elected officials, both the Senate and the House of Representatives, have just overwhelmingly passed the National Defense Authorization Act.
The National Defense Authorization Act, quietly signed into law by the President on New Year's Day.
It's called the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2012. It will give any president the authority to indefinitely imprison you without being charged and without a trial, both in foreign countries and here.
President Obama today proposed something new, something called prolonged detention.
This law seeks to permit the incarceration and imprisonment of people, including American citizens here, indefinitely.
Now, this is not just funding for the Pentagon that's included in this bill. This legislation also has two provisions that give more power to the military and to the government, and so massively alter the Constitution that it's almost laughable, or at least it was laughable when President Obama said he would veto the bill. Now it turns out he won't. So here's what's squeezed into this military fund. Not just money, but lots and lots of power.
Particularly to hear President Obama claim the power to keep people in prison indefinitely with no charges against them, no conviction, no sentence, just imprisonment. It's particularly stunning to hear him make that claim in the middle of a speech that was all about the rule of law.
One senator even said about American citizens being picked up under this section of the NDAA, quote, "When they say, I want a lawyer, you tell them, shut up. You don't get a lawyer," close quote.
Preventive incarceration. Indefinite detention without trial. That's what this is. That's what President Obama proposed today, if you strip away the euphemisms.
So no trial. Prison based solely on suspicion. The Fourth Amendment, out the window. As you may be able to tell, I think this is kind of a big deal.
We shine the spotlight on an executive order that the White House was hoping that you would never learn about. Now, the president signed the National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order late Friday afternoon.
The order signed by President Obama has sparked controversy on both sides of the political aisle. The National Defense Resources Preparedness Executive Order was signed quietly Friday night. It gives the president the power to control U.S. resources in times of war and peace.
Absolute power over any and all American resources during both times of peace and national crisis. Now, this includes, but is not limited to, food and livestock, water, plants, energy, health resources, transportation, and construction materials.
Food, water, oil, and transportation. Now, some are concerned this could lead to the executive branch having absolute authority over the nation's
There's been some online commentary suggesting this gives the executive branch power to allocate energy, food, water in either peacetime or wartime.
The idea of this act is nothing new. Presidents have had this since the 1950s. But what is different about this one, different than any of the other one, is the definition of national defense. It's incorporated what's called the Stafford Act. I don't want to get overly technical, but this gives the president much broader authority than any of the previous acts.
Standard and routine piece of business.
Well, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, along with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, have placed a large and rather interesting order. They've ordered 450 million rounds of ammunition to be created and delivered to them over the next 5 years.
Some lawmakers want to know why the Department of Homeland Security is apparently on a huge ammo buying spree.
The Department of Homeland Security appears to be on a buying spree. Their most recent request is for 10 million rounds of hollow point bullets for a .40 caliber pistol, another 10 million rounds for a 9mm, plus 1.6 million pistol cartridge 9mm ball bullets. And that's just this year.
This is a story that we have been researching and following as the blogs have picked up on it, and developments continue. The Department of Homeland Security buying ammunition, now looking to purchase another 21 million rounds of ammunition. This in addition, of course, to the 1.6 billion rounds that Homeland Security has bought in just the past 10
If you do the math here, that means the Department of Homeland Security has enough bullets to wage a full-scale war for the next 30 years.
In addition to that, recently they've acquired close to 3,000 heavily armed vehicles that are being used for, they say, domestic purposes. What's going on here?
I think Congress should ask the department about both of those issues, and I would like a full explanation as to why.
My last question is, the Department of Homeland Security recently bought 1.6 billion bullets, 7,000 rifles, and riot gear. Why does Homeland Security need these weapons of war against the people?
They have no answer
to that question. Can I ask you this? Because I don't know what the answer is, but I'm wondering, does DHS normally do this where they buy? Because they say we may not need 1.6 billion or 1.2 billion in ammo, but it's up to. We want to sort of authorize up to that number of bullets over the next 5 years.
What about this most recent purchase that we started talking about with these 450 million rounds of ammunition, these kind of rare, very harsh kind of bullets? Have you seen anywhere a justification for this? Because I haven't. I haven't seen anything that sort of outlined exactly what this is going to be used for.
This is what you've written to the DHS. Quote, are these purchases being conducted in a manner that strategically denies the American people access to ammunition? Now, that is a serious question because there is a problem with access to ammunition, according to some local law enforcement agents.
It serves one purpose. It's subterfuge. It's to keep it from being able to get out to the public, to raise the cost.
People are wondering why, for example, is the Social Security Administration getting almost 200,000 rounds of hollow point ammunition? What is it about our Social Security checks and administration that we have guys toting hollow point around with?
Let's cut to the chase here. Why does the DHS need 450 million hollow point bullets?
Well, that is the real
DHS
question.
says the bullets are needed for training, but military veteran Richard Mason is doubtful.
We never trained with hollow points. We didn't even really see hollow points my entire 4.5 years in the Marine Corps. Why would they need all those hollow points? Why would they need all those ball rounds just for training. It doesn't
That's what
really
they're
make
saying. They're
sense.
saying this needs to be used for practicing. So what about that argument?
Well, I think that argument is very thin indeed, especially when you're talking about hollow point bullets and not regular ammunition, when their clear-cut case is to, again, penetrate the target.
The hollow point expands on impact to almost 3 times its size. The expanding effect means that the bullet dumps its power inside the body, damaging more tissue. A larger wound means a greater chance of hitting an organ.
So if this were just for, you know, shooting at a range or training purposes, number one, it wouldn't be this type of lethal ammunition. And number two, it wouldn't be 450 million rounds, literally around a round and a half for every man, woman, and child.
It sounds like a horrendous amount. You know, hollow point ammunition is much more expensive than the type that you would be using for normal target practicing and flanking of that. So there's a lot of things that are stirring around this.
Scott McCurley says it's been a hot topic of conversation at his gun range.
It takes a lot of ammunition to run. 15 million, I'll give you 20 million. But when you start getting into billions in 1 year,
those
that's
are
not
instruments
training.
of war. Department of Homeland Security's, who are they going to fight a war against?
There are some people who say, you know, this is another sign that the U.S. government is preparing for some sort of mass civil unrest.
So let's cut right to the chase, because some of the conspiracy theorists online say this is our government buying up bullets to use against us.
And the people with guns and the people who want to defend themselves, they're worried about some kind of uprising. What is going on in this country?
We're seeing military on the streets practicing. They are actually practicing. The tanks that we see on the streets and the National Guard patrolling neighborhoods and the practices that they're doing with our local police department, this is all in preparation for martial law, so that when they do actually lock down the country, they've got everything secured.
Exercises all across the U.S. Adding that quote, we're being prepared for mass civil unrest in major U.S. cities. DOD will be expected to help when we're requested.
This is 3TV News at 9. I'm Carrie Pena.
And I'm Fields Mosley. First up, it's all eyes on the sky. Live pictures now from Phoenix. For the second night in a row, military training exercises are underway around the valley.
Phoenix PD confirming for us that the Department of Defense is conducting training exercises, trying to get military personnel certified in urban operations.
Just in, a military drill in downtown Miami, complete with these Black Hawk helicopters, elite soldiers, and police officers swarming the streets. It's kind of scary when you suddenly look up and see that, but it's all about being prepared for the unknown of urban combat.
A pretty scary scene along the Chicago River turns out to be a military training exercise.
Our viewers called in describing men with automatic weapons hanging out of helicopters.
Sight of Army helicopters and the sound of gunfire created a lot of concern this afternoon in one Houston neighborhood.
There were armed men in fatigues, plenty of weapons, and what many thought were real live rounds.
I felt like I was in a war zone. It just was nonstop. So I was terrified.
We're practicing for a very high visibility response that could be in response to a threat or an actual activity that takes place.
It was never meant that we would have this gigantic police force from the federal government. I mean, we had martial law up there, FBI and all these agents coming in and closing things down, going into people's houses. No, technology is fine, but it has to be guarded. Yeah. And they own Boston. It's criminal that that people tolerated this so much, that we tolerated this martial law and total acceptance that they can come into our houses and we can't even go out of the house. You know, what if we wanted to go to the store and get a oh no, you can't do that. I think it's very, very scary when I look at some of those pictures that happen up in Boston.
Government, Republicans and Democrats were busy shredding the last vestiges of the Constitution. Senators John McCain and Carl Levin want to enact a law that would declare the entire United States of America a battlefield for the military. They're talking about inserting the Army into domestic law enforcement.
I know there's also been some talk of a connection between DHS and a lot of the police forces in this country.
The amendment would permit the president to use the military for law enforcement purposes in the United States. This, of course, would present a radical departure from any use to which the military has been put in the memory of any Americans now living.
When I speak about the hyper-militarization of our police and the destruction of the firewall that separates domestic police from military activity, this is it.
They have a military command that's aimed at the U.S. in blatant violation of posse comitatus that says that the U.S. military cannot be used in the U.S. against American citizens. That's been thrown out the window now. And they're openly militarizing the police, having the police work with the U.S. military in violation of posse comitatus. And they appear to be getting ready for some kind of civil war, some kind of to intern people. We're in a really dangerous time here in the U.S.
We cannot continue to rely only on our military in order to achieve the national security objectives that we've set. We've got to have a civilian national security force that's just as powerful, just as strong, just as well funded.
We're not aware of the president having created such a force. At least it's not, maybe it's covert, I don't know.
Senator Lindsey Graham, who supports this bill, says, quote, "The homeland is part of the battlefield, and people can be held without trial, whether an American citizen or not."
Senator Lindsey Graham emphasized that the homeland is now part of the battlefield.
If you're an American citizen and you betray your country, you're going to be held in military custody, and you're going to be questioned about what you know. You're not going to be given a lawyer if our national security interests dictate that you not be given a lawyer and go into the criminal justice system, because we're not fighting a crime, we're fighting a war.
If you can detain somebody overseas wanting to attack America and not provide them a lawyer or Miranda rights, you should be able to do it here, because this is the battlefield. America is the prize of the enemy.
Close call at one of the nation's busiest airports has a lot of people looking at a new danger in the sky. Anyone in the country can buy a small, remote-controlled drone.
A new generation of surveillance drones could soon be watching us all from overhead. The Federal Aviation Administration is expected to announce plans to expand the use of domestic drones in American airspace.
Well, get ready to look up at the sky and see drones hovering above. As of now, unmanned aircraft could only be used by military airspace and by certain law enforcement agencies. But this week, Congress passed a bill that would allow for commercial and private use.
There could be as many as 30,000 of these kind of drones, 30,000 flying overhead within the next decade.
We're going to see 20 or 30,000 drones over the United States by the end of this decade.
30,000 UAVs flying over the U.S.
Obviously, the privacy concerns are huge, because they will, in effect, bring every single backyard in America into the authorities'
gave
view.
themselves the authority to capture images of us in the privacy of our backyards, and depending upon how low the drones fly, Jonathan can back me up, inside the home. If the drone is able to see inside the home.
There's actually enough resolution to be able to see the people waving their arms or walking around.
Is this another sign, Scott, that our right to privacy here in the U.S. is
You make an illegal lane change in Hollywood on the 101 freeway, and a drone will just shoot you out of the sky and throw you, bury you.
Well, I don't know that it's going to
I don't know either, but who'd have thought we'd ever get to hear?
Who would have thought that we'd even be having a conversation like this?
I have two words for you: predator drones. You will never see it coming. You think I'm joking?
There's absolutely no way of knowing if we are being filmed at the moment, so we might as well wave to Big Brother up there. In Washington, I'm Ganesh Chekyan.
What worries me is that we'll end up creating categories of people who are then subject to arbitrary arrest. And that's dangerous because we don't know how those categories will be defined or interpreted in the future.
From the letter to vets from the executive branch, quote, a determination of incompetency will prohibit you from purchasing, possessing, receiving, or transporting a firearm or ammunition. If you knowingly violate any of these prohibitions, you'll be fined, imprisoned, or both pursuant to the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention
One day the President of the United States, whomever he or she might be, might say, okay, let's arrest that guy.
Suppose the president decided that one of his political opponents was an enemy of the state. He could make that person disappear. Sounds fanciful, sounds crazy, but it's true.
We face incredibly well-funded gangs of fundamentalist Christian monsters who terrorize their fellow Americans by forcing their weaponized and twisted version of Christianity upon their helpless subordinates in our nation's armed forces. We must vigorously support the continuing efforts to expose pathologically anti-gay, Islamophobic, and rabidly intolerant agitators for what they are, die-hard enemies of the United States.
The memos still continue that are targeting American citizens, libertarians, Ron Paul supporters, people who believe in God and beyond, literally targeting just about every single American citizen that lives here under one guise or the other.
Someone missing fingers on their hands is a suspect, according to the Department of Justice. Someone who has guns, someone who has ammunition that is weatherproofed, someone who has more than 7 days of food in their house can be considered a potential terrorist.
And tonight, also in the news, just 3 weeks after the Boston bombing, the FBI says they have broken up another terror plot, and this one reportedly a man with ties to an American militia group.
His family says the charges are bogus.
We have never done a violent thing like that in our lives.
On his Facebook page 2 years ago, Rogers, who says he founded the Black Snake Militia, spoke of a coming war with the government, allegedly writing, NWO, New World Order, has taken all of your freedoms, right to bear arms, freedom of speech. Together we can fight back. They won't take me down without a fight.
A major scare in a small town in Maryland. Street blocks are shut down by police, all in the search for a man with a big stockpile of weapons.
One neighbor tells us the man is known for not liking the government, but every neighbor we talk to who knows him says he's a very nice guy.
He's a super great guy. He would do anything in the world for his neighbors. I'm very sorry to see this situation. I hope he's okay, and I hope his family's going to be okay through this.
A source tells ABC7 the man is what's called a doomsday prepper who wanted to be ready to defend himself.
Yeah, he wanted to look after himself and his family in the event of a disaster of any kind.
I am told that officers were actually doing a practice SWAT team exercise in the area earlier today, and that's why so many officers, including some from the FBI, were able to get out here so quickly.
If you trust our government, it's fine. If you have any kind of fear that we might be headed towards a totalitarian state, look out, buckle up. There's something going on in our country that is ain't good.